So the golden ratio is very tied to the golden section, and you use the golden ratio basically to find the golden section. So the idea of the golden ratio is that if you start with the right rectangle, and the exact size doesn't matter, what matters is the ratio, the size between the short side and the long side. If it's proper, if it's the right ratio, if you take this side, this length, and you measure it across, and you make that into a square, and then you like ignore that part, like remove that part, the rectangle that you have that remains has the same ratio. So now, if we take this side and we subtract it from here, the rectangle remaining has the same ratio, the same proportion as this one, as well as the big one, because they all have the same one, right? So it creates similar rectangles, geometrically similar rectangles, right? And so we can keep doing that. We can keep subtracting that square until we find a little bitty spot, and that is the golden section. And the idea is that that's where you would put like a key point of interest in the photo. It also makes this nice little spiral. So looking at nature, there are things that sort of use this ratio. So sometimes it's also kind of tied to like the natural world and like how things happen to evolve and different beliefs and ideas about that, and etc. So if we go here, you can see, how some people will talk about it being tied, especially to the way that plants grow. I don't know so much about putting it on someone's face. In my opinion, that's really not like an area of interest. But whatever. Going back here, though, right? So the idea is that you put a point of interest there. Now, this is also tied to the rule of thirds, because with the rule of thirds, we say that you divide it by 3, right? So kind of here-ish and kind of there-ish, and then you divide, well, you can also divide it on the horizontal, so like here-ish and like there-ish. And if you're saying around here and around, what, there? Something like that? That's very close to the same point. So I think the rule of thirds is basically a shortcut to finding the golden section. Now there's also another shortcut. So here they're showing this here too. If you take the short edge and you basically draw to that same point, right? You take this length and you go across to that point, and you draw a straight line from here to one corner, and then you dissect it, or bisect it, dissect it, whatever. You draw a straight line between the two other points. That intersection is a shortcut to get the golden section. So if we go to photography, okay, you can see that here, right? You can see the point of interest on some of these. Now, some of these, I think they just overlaid it to show you like an approximation, because like if you look at this one, it's pretty close, but I don't think the point of interest should be that random spot on his hat. I think it would be like his eyes, or, well, I mean, probably the eyes, right? And same thing for this one. It's not, like, why would it be that little point of, like, the bed, right? It wouldn't, right? But you can also see they've overlaid the rule of thirds here, too, to show how close it is. Like, this versus that, like, it's not that different, right? So it's the same idea. Rule of thirds there, this here, that one, that's really more of rule of thirds, right? You look at where this is, right? It's basically, this rule of third line basically bisects this little structure, right? Whereas the golden section, kind of here-ish, why would you put it there, right? Now this one's really spot on. This person, you're probably not going to be able to like do it when you're taking the photo, because like getting it that perfect, I mean, random chance you'll get it sometimes, right, if you're trying, but they probably cropped it afterwards. They took a photo, had it in about the right spot, and then cropped it, right? That's probably what they did. If we look at these, so this was probably not intentional, because why would you focus on her armpit, right? You wouldn't, right? But you can see that she's basically in that spot, and this looks very much like rule of thirds, right? Like she's probably on the third line. If we look here, rule of thirds, right? Like why would you focus on that part, right? So they probably just stuck the boat on the rule of thirds, and then they're showing here that it's basically the same spot. That one's kind of interesting. This one's pretty spot on. This one might have been intentional, right? Like kind of in the middle of the boat. So hopefully that gives you the idea. This one's also very spot on. And this one. So some of these were probably cropped to get it like perfect like that. And some of the other ones, the person may have been sort of aiming for it and just not cropped it afterwards and been like, you know, close enough. I'm not gonna crop it, but hopefully this gives you the idea of what that is. So the idea is that you're putting the focal point where you want the person to focus on that spot, on the golden section, which you have determined using the golden ratio.